Welcome back to Taking Charge of My Cancer podcast, episode 65. I have the honor to join me today, Jasmine Souers. So Jasmine is a young breast cancer survivor from Jacksonville, Florida. She was diagnosed with a stage 1 breast cancer at the age of 26 in 2016. With the support of her family and close friends, Jasmine underwent a bilateral mastectomy with reconstruction, 25 rounds of proton therapy radiation, and complete 5 years of hormone therapy. While cancer changed the trajectory of her life, she knew that she was able to launch her into a pursuit of purpose-driven life. She turned to her faith and her love of books and personal development to help her grow on her journey. Her bachelor's degree in public relations from the University of North Florida and a nonprofit marketing and development expertise came in handy when she co-founded For Her Breast of US, the first online community for all women of color affected by breast cancer. So today, Jasmine emphasized the power of collaboration for innovation and better health for all, as the founding president and CEO of the Missing Pink Breast Cancer Alliance and editor of More Life magazine. She is a board member of GRASP and lends her experiences and expertise to efforts that advance health equity in breast care, such as an American National Breast Cancer Roundtable and Citizens Advisory Committee on Breast Cancer in Young Women. So Jasmine, thank you so much for being with me today. I really appreciate you taking the time and for the willingness to share your story.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited for the opportunity to be here.
Absolutely. So you want to tell us a little bit about your diagnosis and how did you find breast cancer being that young?
So I was 25 when I started to display symptoms of breast cancer. I had one breast that was larger than the other one that I didn't really notice at first. The first sign actually was that there were stains on the inside of my bra, but I had triple D's, and so I thought maybe I was catching food. And it wasn't until down the line that I realized, oh no, it's only happening on one cup. It's not both cups. One day I was standing in front of the mirror and I was wearing a ribbed tank top. And the lines of the tank top allowed me to see that one breast was swollen. And at an event at work a few months prior, that's where I learned to do a self breast exam. And so I took my clothes off and I started to do like the closest way that I could think about how to do it. And when I did that, discharge expelled. I know that they were my breast. There were parts that was much harder in some spots than others. And that's when I got nervous. That's when I got scared. I remember I called my mom and I said, I think something's wrong. I went to the hospital. We got turned away from the hospital. They were like, we don't do these type of screenings here. The breast isn't red. You don't have any symptoms. We don't feel a lump. And I did not feel a lump either. I just knew that it did not feel normal. It did not feel like the other breast, and it was leaking.
Also was leaking and they didn't even say that was abnormal.
They could not replicate the discharge because it was only, it only leaked when it was pressed on. So what was happening with the discharge, I was finding my bras that it was happening at night for the most part. Okay. So I'm sleeping on my chest. And so I wake up and it's like, okay, yeah. And so I noticed it also too, more so around my cycle. So I really could not tell what was happening. I just knew that it didn't always leak. I went to my primary care doctor and they kept telling me that I was too young for breast cancer. Now, for context, my grandmother has had breast cancer. By that time, she'd had it twice. Some of her sisters have had breast cancer. And I knew that breast cancer, quote unquote, ran in my family, but I wasn't quite sure what that meant. I didn't know, like, does that mean I didn't know, is it a gene or like, what does that look like in my family? I just knew something was not right, but I passed a mammogram and I passed an ultrasound, and the doctor said maybe it's a breast infection and she gave me antibiotics and sent me on my way. I never took the antibiotics because I was like, I don't have any symptoms of an infection. So why would that be it? Like that just didn't make sense to me. About 6-7 months went by. And at this point in my life, I was about 2 years into a marriage. And so we were talking about starting a family, having a baby. So I was talking to my OBGYN and I said, before we go any further, I really want someone to take a look at this breast because at this point, the discharge had become bloody. Oh. And the difference with this doctor and the first doctor is this doctor said, if you believe something is wrong, then something is wrong. And she sent me to a specialist. And it was a specialist and just her persistence, Dr. Bajra. at UF Health. It was her persistence that allowed us to figure out what was actually going on, because I passed another mammogram, but we did a breast MRI and almost the whole breast lit up by then. So we discovered that I had multiple tumors across 9 centimeters, some invasive, some non-invasive. And I was officially diagnosed December 30th in 2016.
Oh, wow. Did they ever do genetic testing?
They did, and they did not find any genes. And I actually just did another study at Mayo Clinic. I think it was like an 89 panel. They found nothing. So I guess the luck of the draw. Sometimes it happens that way.
Yep, yeah. All right. What type of resources do you use that help you to make decisions about your treatments?
It was really difficult at first. I went through several oncologists. I had a difficult time finding oncologists that were willing to explain things to me, because I'm young. I don't understand what's happening. My family, like, they love me and they've been incredibly supportive, but they didn't really know how to navigate any of this either. It was my nurse navigator who connected me to the Young Survival Coalition, and that's where I found community first with other young women. And in that support group and the Facebook groups, that's where I started to learn a lot more stuff. The conversations alone with other young women, if you have the right context, like, we're in different places, we don't know cancer really the same, even if we're the same subtype, if you're able to navigate with that context and not expect everything to be the same, it's a great learning ground. So my first place was Young Survival Coalition. And then over the years, I got into advocacy. And so that connected me to research, and I could navigate a little bit better.
That's great. So were you already having your bachelor's at that time, right? So were you planning to do something completely different than what you're doing right now? And I'm going to ask you next question, like what exactly you're doing right now, but how did the cancer change your path?
The cancer changed everything. I remember we were having these conversations about hormone therapy, and at the same time that I was diagnosed with cancer, my neighbor, who was a lot older than me, she found out she was pregnant. And so I was like, that's supposed to be my life. You know what I mean? It was difficult. But I remember, like, I went to God and I said, yo, if you're going to take these next 5 years, just please give me the life that I always wanted. And it really became an undoing. It became an undoing, and became a massive redirection. My initial intent, while everything was happening, I think the first big awakening was going into the day of my bilateral mastectomy. That was my first major surgery as a 26-year-old. So I was 26 by the time that I was diagnosed. And I remember going in there and I was shaking. I was so scared. I was terrified.
Or
And I just had this thought, is like, the fear wasn't necessarily that I was going to die. It was that I would have died having played small. I would have died trying to play it safe and not really accomplish. So as soon as I got out, as soon as I could start writing, as soon as I started to take note of all these different experiences that I had that made me feel like the other. What did it feel like to be in the support group and be the only young person, sometimes only Black person? Was it feel like to go shopping for wigs? I was in a weird place, didn't know whether I had to do chemo or not. So I wanted to be prepared, but they didn't have wigs for Black hair. And that was the place I knew in town. There was only one really cancer place, wigs were like that. And so I was very intentional about saying, I need something to come out of this. The first thing that I did was I started sending care packages to women. I designed t-shirts and I sent care packages to women around the world, like to Africa and all these places. I started a blog. I started doing support groups for Young Survival Coalition. And then in 2019 is where I started that blog. And that's where things really took off. It came from a place of, I felt like my story was powerful on its own, but I feel like it's even more powerful when you can do collective experiences. But after that, I didn't want to just tell stories. I wanted to, like, change stories, right? I wanted to rewrite stories. And so to your point, in this work that I'm doing now, it is helping bring together all of this great expertise that's going to help people change stories, to change the directory, and hopefully end the disparities in the Black and brown breast cancer community.
that's so cool. That's amazing. Sometimes we take things for granted, and until you're there, and then you're like, man, like It's nothing around that. It's nothing, nobody's been thinking about that because again, many times when something like this happen, many times minorities just really is scary, is not as many because doesn't present as many, so sometimes it's just, you just don't know what's out there until you find it's nothing out there. So I really applaud you for doing what you do, and I'm gonna really talk. This is what I do daily. I see patients all day long with all different kind of cancer, but breast is the majority of it. So I'll be guiding some people towards your webpage and your organization, which I think they'll really get a good info out of it. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So will you give us 3 valuable tips that you learned about your journey with your diagnosis?
I think the first thing was that you are the boss of your body in your healthcare. I think being misdiagnosed really made me aware that doctors were not infallible, right? That even the technology, right? Even the technology has misses. And I think I went into this going, tell me what to do. And then I was like, nah, I need to understand some things of my own. I need us to like go into this together. And so the first thing was, I'm the boss. And that means I have to have the information. I either go out and get the research. I have to have doctors that are willing to explain things to me. If I don't understand, I will let you know I don't understand. I'm not leaving, not understanding.
Yeah.
So that was one of the first things, that you really are the boss, and it really does require you to be engaged. I have done focus groups with other young Black women, and they said they didn't think it was important to understand their type of cancer, their subtype. But if you don't know your subtype, you don't know if you're getting the right treatments, So it's really important that you're engaged in the process. The second thing, this is something that I've kind of learned over time that I'm really kind of leaning into. I'm in this year, Lord willing, will be my 8 years of no evidence of disease. So the 8 years of, yes, of cancer survivorship. And I didn't have a word for it then, but I was recognizing that I needed to be seen as more than a tumor, right? More than a cancer that needed to be cured, that my relationships were being affected. My marriage was affected. Our sex life was affected. My mental health was affected. My sense of self was affected with the mastectomy. All these different things were happening, but I was trying to piece together the help and the support that I needed. And now discovering things like whole person care, right? Integrative health, and looking at self-care and nutrition and mental and physical and spiritual, that has been really helpful for me. Because cancer it's more than what's happening in your body. And I tell people all the time, for me, it became much more of a mental and spiritual thing. I couldn't control that I was in pain, from surgeries.
Yeah.
I could control if I was going to get depressed in this, or if I was going to just sit in this. And then I think the last thing was, it's interesting. Sometimes bad things happen and it'll wreck your faith. And then sometimes bad things happen and it'll make you cling to it. And for me, it became an opportunity for me to cling to my faith. I really just saw God move in ways that I can never imagine. Just the ways that were made, even the way that my body healed, and because I went through it, we went through the ringer for several years. And so for me, it did become an opportunity to become more spiritually grounded as well.
That's amazing. Did you ever get physical therapy through any of your treatments whatsoever? Did you ever talk to anybody from the rehab standpoint?
So that was an interesting thing. I talk about all the time, like I slipped through a lot of cracks, man. It was a challenge. And again, I did not know that some of these things were challenges for other people, because I didn't know that it was working smoother in other places. So I got a few weeks out from needing to start radiation before someone said, then I said, like, I can't get my arms over my head. And I got into like some really intense regular physical therapy a few weeks before starting radiation, just so I could get my arms over my head. I remember going in for the practice day of trying to do that reach, and I was like crying, trying to get dressed. It was, my arms were not ready, because no one ever told me to start moving.
Mhm.
And so I did do the physical therapy. I had a great physical therapist, and she also did a great job helping. I had a lot of cording too, and lymphedema. She did a great job helping me resolve that as well.
Okay, perfect. Did you ever continue seeing them at all through your survivorship? Like, anything on those lines? Like, did she continue seeing you after radiation? Did they do a surveillance program to make sure you didn't develop any lymphedema, any of that?
I do the screening, the lymphedema screening when I go to my radiation oncologist.
Okay.
But other than that, it's really resolved, which I think is interesting.
Uh-huh.
Like I don't wear the glove. I don't really swell. It's not noticeable if I am. So yeah, I'm healing.
Okay, great. So you actually developed lymphedema.
I actually did develop lymphedema. And I wore a sleeve probably that first year or two.
Okay, and then went away. Perfect.
It
That's
did, yeah.
good. Excellent. Very good. How about your most painful lesson that you learned to this journey? And I'm sure it was a lot of painful lessons, but if you want to pick one that you feel like, man, this was really tough.
I I don't know that it was the most painful one. I think one of the most challenging and unexpected one was what survivorship looks like. I'm not sure how many of us are equipped for survivorship. What does it look like as you start to there's a time when you really need these communities, when you need this space, and then suddenly some of the stuff just isn't relevant to you anymore. I don't have to go to the doctor appointments. I don't need those things. Like I started to pull out of that. And it really did. I wrestled with that a lot. Do I feel like I'm leaving people behind, or where am I supposed to be now? Or I don't want to talk about cancer all the time anymore. I think that was one of the biggest things is that very quickly turned my experience into supporting other people, and advocating and leading and doing all of these things that are incredible and help so many people. I don't think I spent enough time as a patient in helping myself navigate through those things. And so as I move out the process on a leadership side, I'm like, I don't fit in the patient space like I used to. So I think trying to figure out how I fit in the community as a survivor that maybe doesn't want to talk about cancer all the time, that's been a really interesting and yeah. And I think there's also this kind of acknowledgement too of being in a space where I don't want to talk about cancer or think about cancer all the time, but I have friends who are living with metastatic breast cancer. They don't have that choice, right? So it's almost like a privilege to say, I don't want to talk about that. So it's been really interesting just trying to navigate life after. I said, after the bell rings, it just that first couple of years is really awkward. I tell people all the time, it was like everyone else's life pressed pause, but I was on a different tape. I couldn't pick up where I left off. So survivorship was really challenging.
And it is, when I'm talking to people out there, it is something that I think we need to be better at in the healthcare system is a survivorship. Like we are really good at, we get a diagnosis, we know what to do for that, we know how to treat it, we know how to kind of, save your life, we know how to treat you while you go into these treatments. And then life move on, like you say, and you guys are still having some effects from these treatments, and you're still having the fear of, is this going to come back ever? But how do we manage that as a healthcare provider? So I think that, is some programs out there is a program at Penn who is really, really good. No, it's a General Massachusetts that is really great in survivorship that I want us to try to hopefully implement here. But I think is just really looking at now you're just coming into a different stage where yes, it is not that it's no cancer anymore, but all these leftovers from it that you still needed to face because like you say, how much that affect your mental health, how much that affect your relationship with your husband, your sexual activity, all those other things that these hormone blockers can do later on, right? That is important to you have that kind of like a safe place for you to go and get help with it. So hopefully people knows that and we know that and we are hopefully working on improving that. And now it's more about survivorship than just treating the cancer, right? We used to say, oh, we're going to give you so many rounds of chemo, so many rounds of radiation, so we can kill it. But at the same time now is more, do we really need to do that? Is that really giving you more years to live, but we're giving you more troubles? So it's not necessarily to do that. Let's just do less so we have less issues, but the time for survivor is the same. So why are we doing more if the time is not really changing, right? So we are getting better, in those things. But yes, you're right. We still needed to improve, but we have people like you that hopefully is helping with your platforms to help other people to kind of like go and find supportive and find those groups that you can talk to somebody like you and say it's nice not to want to talk about cancer because this is not there anymore, but yet I'm a cancer survivor, right? So, but yeah, so hopefully we will continue improving that as we go.
Yeah, I think that we kind of use it for like collateral damage. And I often tell people, I don't think I had a minute to process what happened until like the last day of radiation. Then I was like, whoa, I've been running for like a year. There's so many things that have happened. What has happened to my body? How has my relationship changed? How are these things? And so to your point, even I hit the 5-year mark. I came off hormone therapy. About a year and a half, I think, from ending that, and my body's still healing, and we're still trying to normalize. So there is like it's definitely not just something that it's not a switch. I was looking for it to be a switch, right? Even at the 5-year mark, it's like no more doctor's appointments regularly. Click, and it's not that. It's not that.
Yep, yep. With anything that you have that will be of value for the audience, and will you share it with us?
Say that again, please.
Is there anything that you have that will be of a value for our audience? And will you share that with us?
Absolutely. The project that my nonprofit is called the Missing Pink Breast Cancer Alliance. And it started just from this understanding that I feel like we're better together. There's a lot of competition and duplicity in the breast cancer community. And it's kind of developed a lot of disjointed efforts, a lot of competitive efforts. And that's not to the benefit of patients. And it's honestly not to the benefit of the people that have to help patients navigate things. If there are a million places that are doing the same thing, you just don't know what's the right one, what's the best one. So I started this project called the More Life Magazine, and it is bringing together, again, that expertise, the information, innovation, and information just across the breast cancer community to one place. So it makes it a lot easier for people to see what's happening, what great work is happening. There's so much great work that's happening across the community, and it also has a directory of over like 350 nonprofits across the U.S.
That's great. So tell me a little bit about the missing link piece. Like how did you come up with that?
The missing pink, well, it was interesting because it was looking at this idea of that, one, the missing link, right, is that we could be working better together. But the missing pink because we are not working better together, have left behind minority communities. So very intentional about the pink that was chose for our logo was a pink with more of a brown tone in it, as opposed to like one of the more brighter pinks. So it's the two things. It is, we need to work better together. And because we're not working better together, we're leaving people behind. But I strongly believe that when organizations are both strong and great at what they do and supportive of what other organizations are doing, that allows us to build momentum, right? So we be the change, the CHAING, right? Like GE, like that allows us to work together and actually make things happen.
Okay, great. Is any activities that you recommended during your treatment? Like what did you do during your treatment that you felt that helped?
I journaled a lot. I went to therapy a lot. One thing that I wish I would have done, I developed heat sensitivity to the hormone therapy. So when I would try to work out, anytime I got overheated, I would get really sick. And so hormone therapy for me made me gain weight very quickly. I think I started at Lupron, I gained 20 pounds in like 3 months. And so I carried that weight for a lot of that the last 3 years of the 5 hormone therapy. And so one of the things I wish I would have done differently is I wish I would just try to find different exercise. Not just say like I can't exercise, but like to really have tried to find something that maybe maybe not cardio, maybe something else. I really wish I would have done that. And I think the other thing is I actually did ask about nutrition, but we didn't have nutritionists where I was being treated. So all those things now, like I had to hit the 5-year mark, and coming off the hormone therapy, it feels like an opportunity to kind of take my body back, I feel like. And so now has been my time where I'm like, I'm going to the gym and I'm going to do better with my diet, and I'm going to learn some stuff. And so I think that's those things were really helpful for me.
That's excellent. And I'm kind of glad you mentioned that, because as we know right now, we know that one of the very important part of navigating through cancer and then afterward as a survivor, because all these secondary effects, is exercise. And I think that's the one of the best ways to cope with mental health, with energy, that cancer-related fatigue lingering. So that's exactly what the research shows. And I think it's just the healthier you are, the better you keep your BMI low, that put you in a less risk to develop lymphedema. In postmenopausal woman, put you in less, that appear positive. They are that will help you to decrease your risk to develop another breast cancer recurrence. So I think it's really important. And that's what we try to really encourage. Even if I know you didn't have to go through chemotherapy, but even when you're going through chemo, we tend to be like, oh no, I'm in chemo, I really cannot do anything. So the family, right, the caregivers are like, no, you're in chemo, just sit down on the couch and we do everything for you. And we see more and more how if you keep doing exercise and even exercise right before chemo, how much better you can enhance that chemotherapy, how much better you can mitigate all those secondary effects, even with radiation. We see patients here weekly that going through radiation, and then we work you guys out right before your radiation treatment. So we enhancing that radiation, we helping with that fatigue, we keep things moving, and all that together kind of really helping with nutrition and then mental health. So I think it's important for people out there, that if you're in your same boat, like, oh, but I just really getting hot. Like, again, it's options. It's aquatic therapy. It is fans. It's water. It's strength training. It is yoga. It is so many other alternatives to try to help with that. So I'm kind of glad that you are doing that right now. Is any 3 books would you recommend to my audience, and why?
I think the 3 books, and they're not really related to cancer, but the 3 books that really helped me was one, the Bible, because it helped me be spiritually grounded. There's a book called Boundaries. I don't know that we really anticipate how difficult it can be when you're trying to navigate what's happening to you, but then other people are trying to make you help them navigate what's happening to you. And it's like, I don't have capacity. I really can't help you like process how you feel about me being sick right now. I don't have it in me. So the book Boundaries, I thought was really good for that. And then the other book that my therapist gave me at the time, it was called Scripture Confessions. And it was just a matter of starting to speak life over yourself. It was really good, especially if you need to remind yourself of healing and just getting your mind into alignment, because it's a really hard time. It was one of the hardest times I think in my life. And like I said, a lot of things got undone. By the end of that 5-year thing, I got divorced. I left the first company. So a lot of things happened, but all for the better. And so I think when you have the opportunity to kind of ground yourself and you have people that can help you stay grounded too, it makes it doable. It's all doable.
That's great. And then I will write some of that on my show notes as well. Is any podcast that you will recommend for the audience?
Podcast. So the organization, the first one that I co-founded, called For the Breast of Us, they have a podcast. I think it's called Baddies to Baddie. I think they're still doing that. There's also one called Too Young for This. I think it's SHIT. No curse, but it's a young breast cancer podcast. And Our NBC Life. It is a great podcast that is led by both people with metastatic breast cancer and some allies, accomplices. So that's a great one for people with metastatic breast cancer that are interested in learning more and just being more informed about the disease and surviving.
Excellent. Is any one question you wish I will have asked you and where you have answered to wrap up?
No, I think we've answered it all, unless you can think of anything. Is there anything else you'd like to ask?
So how do you think you have been affecting all these, women like you since you start your organization? How much power or empower have you think that you have been creating during these years helping people out there?
When I started, I co-founded that first community. That first community was the first community for women of color affected by breast cancer, meaning it brought together Asian women, Black women, like they had never seen anything like that. And when we started that, that got a lot of organizations that were bigger than us thinking like, oh, we're leaving people behind. And so because we did that, we saw this kind of, what was it, the ripple effect. Larger organizations were like, we need to do things for women of color. And so we really did start that trend in the space. And since then, like we were doing the Facebook Live talk show, and now there are so many things like we've really started a lot of trends in that space. And I think we inspired a lot of people to understand that our voices matter in this, representation matters. We did a campaign called When You See Us, and it was the first time that I think a lot of people saw so many different women of color affected by breast cancer, so many different shapes and sizes and all these things. It went viral. They covered that campaign in France. In France, like that's how much people wanted to see that. And so I think with the work that I was doing there, it absolutely caused a ripple effect in the community, and it was a pleasure to be part of that work. In this space, with More Life magazine and creating this unique space that's dedicated to the change makers, to the people that are doing the work. I think I want to help the people that are supporting the people, our advocates, our community leaders, help them be better connected. And in the first couple of months of launching this website, we had over 5,000 visits. We're getting visits again from Canada and from France. And so there's clearly, and people keep asking, like, are we going to go international? I'm like, we're just getting started. Let me figure this out. But I think that really speaks to the desire for people to have the information and to understand what's happening across the community.
That's awesome. And I'm original from Colombia, right? So I'm in my minority as well, like I'm Latin. So, but yes, it's so great because again, so many people, because language, because education, because whatever reason, sometimes they don't feel they have the same resources that other people has, and that is not true, right? Because the resources are there, just nobody ever has shown them how to get to them.
That's exactly it. I did a study during my time with that first organization. It was about the opportunity to increase the enrollment of women of color in clinical trials. And one of the things we saw in that study was, and we looked at the experiences of white women versus that of collective women of color. One of the things that we saw is that when white women were encountering an issue, they were spending more time figuring out how to solve it. When women of color encountered an issue, they just disqualified themselves. And so we said, okay, if we know that that's what's, and it's interesting because I look at that research, but I've done that myself. I've done that myself. I didn't understand it. Instead of me asking, I just figured I couldn't. And I think in knowing that, I then tell people, what do we do differently? Like you look at policies, you look at procedure, you look at what if you anticipate someone might have a challenge or a barrier and you tell them that there's help. They don't have to say, I need help. You know what I mean? So absolutely. And you may be interested in, I just did a story of this on More Life magazine. They just did the first Latino cancer advocacy training. Yes, I will send you their contact. But for those reasons, to your point, the cancer is #1 cause of death in the Latino community, but there aren't a lot of Latino cancer advocates and language, right? Access, opportunity, and people are doing great work to change that.
That's awesome. Yes, I'm so excited to hear more about it. So that has been super great. Jasmine, has been a pleasure to have you really with me this afternoon. I'm really enjoying this conversation with you. Thank you so much for being part of this.
Thank you for the opportunity. I've enjoyed this as well.
Okay, you have a great evening.
You too.
Bye.